Hello everyone, I am Rachel and we are here live at the Region 12 Doll Conference here in Frankenmuth, Michigan. So we have something very exciting. We're in the Dolly Cam, but we're not going to be talking dolls. We're going to be talking Steiff animals, Steiff Plush, and we are here with a very special guest. We're here with Rebekah Kaufman, who a lot of you know as Steiff Gal. She is a wealth of knowledge. This morning she gave a wonderful dialogue, a talk with some of the attendees here, and we are lucky because she is going to do the talk again with us. It's going to be a little bit more of an abbreviated version. We're going to learn some information and then we're going to do some hands-on learning on how to date vintage Steiff animals. So look, learn, share, ask questions, do it all. We're here, it's live, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So I'm going to introduce Rebekah, and she's going to take us away. Hello, Rebekah.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. What a pleasure.
Thank you for being here and for sharing your information and knowledge with us. First, how has the regional convention been for you?
It's been wonderful. I came here with two friends from the Boston area, and we've been involved on every level. We've been hostesses for lunch. I have given a presentation yesterday. We're doing a dynamic doll dialogue today, and I think probably the highlight of my trip is working here with Rachel and sharing my presentation with the world.
It is so sweet of you to do that because you have, here's your little sign right there. You put together this wonderful presentation, a lot of effort into it, and now our viewers get to benefit from it. So this is a handout that we are going to be posting on our site, which is so generous of you. And it's a guide to dating 20th century Steiff, made simple, sort of. I love it.
Well, it's never really simple because Steiff is not a perfect science, it's an art. And what I'm going to share with you today is my interpretation of how to date and what I look for when I'm asked professionally to evaluate or date or catalog Steiff. So I'm going to show you some guidelines that will help you determine basically, in broad sense, how old something is and what era it was produced, and perhaps some of the design influences behind it.
And I should have mentioned right before we got started talking with you, you date and you do a lot with Steiff North America. You work with a lot of auction houses. You're an authority, so you have learned a lot and you've taken a lot of time to do all this research. So thank you for sharing it with
My
us.
pleasure. I really love to share the love of vintage Steiff, and hopefully by the end of this you will love Steiff even more. That would be my goal for everyone.
And just before we get started, she does have a Ruby Lane shop that is full of wonderful Steiff, and she is selling right now in the Ruby Red Tag sale. Okay.
That is correct.
Yes, it's happening right now. So
that is correct. So what we have here, and I'm going to walk Rachel through this and also the listeners, is I have prepared a handout on the basic properties of Steiff, including IDs and material and design from the turn of last century through about 1980, because these are the items for the most part that we're selling on Ruby Lane and that the collectors are interested in. And these are the pieces you are most likely to find at a flea market, at an antique sale, at a tag sale, at an antique mall. So hopefully by the end of this program you'll have a better idea when they might have been made, and in turn help you better determine their value in terms of materials and such.
Awesome.
Okay, so Steiff basically, in a perfect world, has three forms of ID. They have the ear button, the ear tag, and the chest tag. In a perfect world, a piece still has all of those items, but in a lot of cases they don't. So I'm going to show you those different pieces and how to date given that you have those IDs, but I'm also going to give you characteristics of things that if something had no IDs, how you could determine if it was Steiff and what those properties would look like. So the most popular, what Steiff is best known for is the vintage button in ear. And this is a fabulous chart, and as Rachel had said,
this is an amazing chart, Rebekah. Wow.
And this is not my work. This is from the Selesnik's Teddy Bear Love for Life. This is I think one of the finest Steiff books. It's not perfect, no Steiff book is, but it has wonderful pictures and great information. I would highly recommend, if you're interested in vintage Steiff, looking into this book, which is available on many channels online. But this chart, which I will include in the handout I'm giving to Rachel, really summarizes over time how the buttons have changed. And it's really just important to know that the guidelines on this page, and I'm not going to go over every one because you're seeing them here, but the buttons for the most part fall within categories, but there are periods in Steiff's history, like say in the late the late 1940s to the early 1950s, you're going to see a variety of different buttons because Steiff was using vintage buttons. Steiff was using a new button, which was a blank button at the time. Steiff was using an all capital button. And people just have to take Steiff very flexibly, that the item was designed at a time when materials were being used, that the materials were on hand. If they were buttoning something and they came across an old button, they just put it in because they didn't really care. It's just the branding. But the information that I'll be providing to you in the information, the sequence of buttons basically goes from an elephant button, which is the first button, and if you look here, Rachel, can you see this here?
We can.
Okay, you can see the dates on that. What's so fascinating, if the viewers look closely, that's an elephant with a trunk in the shape of an S, and that's S for Steiff. And the first animal Margareta made, or the first pincushion that turned into an animal, was an elephant. So the elephant and Steiff really are legacy partners in the branding, and Steiff's first brand actually was the elephant. Then you go into a blank button, which appeared for a couple of years. Then a long trailing F button, which means that the last F in the word Steiff in the button would curve backwards almost half the distance of the word. Starting in about 1933, 1934, you had a short trailing F button, meaning that the last F curved under about a little, maybe a quarter or less under the word Steiff. The time that we had discussed, the right after World War II, you'd have a blank button, you'd have Steiff in all capital letters, or you might have some earlier buttons as well. Very often, probably the most common items that you will find in a antique store, on my store, in general, would be the raised script button, which appeared basically the mid-50s to the late 70s. You'd find the lentil button, which is from the 60s and the 70s. And after the late 70s on, Steiff used a more secure button, which really didn't fall out. The buttons that we're discussing here often fell out, and that's why it's a wonderful, it's the wonderful experience and a wonderful find to find something with a button. But these generally could fall out or be picked out, and these could not. Okay.
Wonderful.
So in addition to the button, we also have, if I can find it, chest tags, and basically from about 1926. Most, but not all, Steiff items left with chest tags, and this is another way of identifying. Actually, the earliest Steiff chest tag, and I've only handled one or two of these in my career, is a chest tag that matches that early elephant button.
I've never seen one of those.
And this is very ephemeral. They're about the size of a quarter and made out of very thin paper. They're actually a burgundy color and tan, held on with a string to the item. I've seen this on a rod bear, which was fascinating, and you can see the elephant there on the button. From the 26 to 28, these very rare chest tags, metal rimmed with the name in black on cardboard. And this is Molly and Fluffy, who are very typical items of the period. And a lot of times you will find, if you were to find a chest tag, it might be on one of these two items because these were produced in large quantities at the time. In about 1928 through 1952, you're going to see what's called the watermelon bear head. And you'll notice he's kind of square and kind of chunky looking. In a dark blue with the name of the item in red.
Okay.
Right after the war, we've softened up the bear. You can see the difference between sort of the squarish face and the roundish face. And lighter blue, also the name in red, very early. This is instrumental in helping us date if the item is fortunate enough to have the chest tag with the colored name imprint. And what you're going to see here is between this item, which is basically pre-war, this which is post-war, is that the company at this time was really trying to regenerate and rebrand itself. It was a German company. There was, some laundry that comes with that coming right out of World War II. The company tried to rebrand, create new products that are uplifting and joyful and happy, and give themselves sort of a more playful image, and you're going to start seeing that not only in the chest tags but in the entire product design, and that's why you can see this difference from pre-war to post-war. Shortly after this tag, we have this almost identical tag, but with the name in blue. Here's red versus blue, earlier, later. And for the sake of our conversation today, we're going to stop at 2006, where you see the red and blue chest tags. Again, another way of dating, but again, these often fell off as well. You're very lucky if you find something with these, but it's just a piece in the puzzle to date. Okay.
Wonderful. Again, we are here with Rebekah Kaufman. She is the Steiff gal. She is a shop owner in Ruby Lane, and we are having a little mini seminar on dating vintage and antique Steiff.
and we're going to put you to work.
I'm so excited.
I hope you're listening, and I hope you're learning. And the last physical ID that I'm briefly going to talk about are the ear tags. And again, this is very general, but just enough to give you a flavor of what's going on. The white ear tag is the earliest, and it's really remarkable to find anything with the white ear tag, and that could increase its value many factors because it's so rare and so ephemeral. Starting in the mid-20s, we have the red ear tags, and what I'm noticing with the folks on Ruby Lane and customers and clients, people are loving things from this period, the 20s through the 30s. Things are very generally very happy, very playful, very innovative, very joyful. So this is sort of reflective of that time. And starting in the mid-30s, early 1934 and onward, we're looking at a yellow ear tag.
That's what most people recognize.
People recognize.
This is rare. These are hard to find, and when she says ephemeral, it means that they disintegrate. They don't last forever.
They don't last forever. Okay, so those are the physical features that I'd like to talk to you about, that if you're lucky enough to find a piece with those items, it helps to date. But oftentimes, personally and professionally, we come across things that do not have IDs. We would like to know if they're Steiff, and how does the design evolve over time, which helps us date them. It's impossible to say this was made on February 13th, 1964, but you can say this was made in the mid-60s, based on a combination of IDs and also design trends. So I'm going to share with you how I, as a professional, when someone comes to me with items, I look at basically, in addition to those IDs, I look at 3 areas to figure out where does this live on the Steiff family tree of product design and development. And again, this is in the handout, so you don't have to take any notes, but please listen and learn. So we're looking at the 3 things that I look at when trying to figure out what do we got here. I look at jointing, I look at materials and detailing, and believe it or not, I look at the eyes. And these 3 factors, married with any ID information, can generally put something within a decade. At least.
That's amazing.
So and so what I'm trying to teach you here is, if you have something without ID, that you can still sort of figure out when it was done.
Close.
You can get close. So let's talk about jointing. Okay. As for jointing, earliest to latest, and the Steiff earliest products are very simple. Think of the felt elephant Margareta made, or the very simple begging rabbits. They're unjointed and very, very simple. Then things became jointed because people were very interested in these products. Richard Steiff's design innovations, starting with the jointed teddy bear in the 1902, 1903 time, things got moving, and Steiff started creating items that moved to create more interaction and playfulness with children. Shortly after that, starting in about, maybe 1908, 1909 or so, fully jointed and more, Steiff really went crazy. So not only did you have arms and legs that moved and heads that moved, you'd have something like ears that moved. One of the finest pieces that I have in my collection that I got here at a UFDC event, and I think we talked about it last year, was the Dutch rabbit, the black and white Dutch rabbit, where the ears actually are on joints.
So what you're going to see
is that the ears circle 360 and have the same jointings as the arms and the legs. And another example of a fully jointed item might be something like a cat that has the head move, the arms move, the legs move, and the tail could spin 360. So, and also, what was really a fun product is Steiff made a jointed squirrel. Like, why would a squirrel be jointed? His tail actually spun around, and I have one of those too. They're really precious. But that's a product that you would see probably around 1909, 1910 or so. That's a very wonderful and exciting product. You would also see, starting in the 30s, something called tail moves head jointing. And that would mean that the tail, when you switch it to the left and the right, the head would move, or the head would move in a circle. And that came at a very interesting time. In the 1930s, Steiff sort of went in 2 directions. It was kind of a time of great upheaval in Germany, and a lot was going on socioeconomically as well as politically. Steiff went in 2 directions. They made really high-end stuff because there was still a group of people that had a lot of money that wanted high-end playthings. And what you'd see there is that's why they would make the tail moves heads. So this is from the 30s. They'd also make very snap-jointed items. You rarely, if ever, see those. Those are very rare, but also from the 30s. At the same time, Steiff also created a series of what they call woodland miniatures. And those were little tiny birds, rabbits, foxes, any little, the ladybugs. They're the size of a quarter or a little bit bigger. And those were produced because Steiff was looking for a product that was less expensive to produce, that they could produce on a large scale and keep the factory running and keep people buying and collecting. And they also fit in culturally because traditionally German people like to decorate extensively for Christmas and Easter, and these little rabbits and bugs and birds and such
put them everywhere.
looked wonderful on a mantle or around a Christmas table or whatever. So those are wonderful items. That would be the lower end, and these fully jointed in the 30s would be the higher end. As time went on, things became less jointed, as times became harder and such, head jointed, and then unjointed. And what's very interesting is you'll often see a product that looks very similar that was made in maybe the 50s and in the 70s. They look very similar, except one is only head jointed and one is fully jointed. Because when you think about it from a manufacturing perspective and an economic perspective, it takes a lot more work to create a jointed product than an unjointed product.
Right.
So you're looking at saving money over time. So it's sort of, you think the timeline is where the simpler an item is, the later on it was produced. So that's jointing, and again, it's just one factor. Materials and detailing, earliest to latest. Again, this is my interpretation. Everybody sees things differently, but over time, these are some characteristics that I look at to figure out approximately when something might be made. The earliest products, of course, were made from felt, as Margareta Steiff was a felt seamstress. Velvet was another common material at the early turn of last century. Mohair became commercially available on a scale that one could manufacture for a global company in 1903. So from 1903 onward, mohair is a prominent fabric in the Steiff line, and everybody knows that's a cotton with a woolen fiber that's almost like hooked like a carpet, and it has a bristly feeling to it, okay? So those materials, any products that Steiff made before 1903 would probably not be from mohair because it just wasn't available. Another thing that was very popular, say in the teens and the 20s, I call it patched color detailing, and I have examples of that. So an item would be made of different color mohair, but with seams. So they would be actually made with different swatches of color as opposed to being painted. So if you find an item that has patched color, it generally indicates this is an earlier pre-war item, probably from the 20s, give or take. Tipped mohair is another fabric that's wonderful and basically born or launched in the mid-20s. And the best way to describe tipped mohair is that if you know someone has a mohawk that's dyed a color and it grows out a little bit, like so only the tips have color.
Yes, okay.
So it'll be one color on the bottom and a brighter color or a happier color on the top. And you'd often see that on something like Steiff's Petsy Bears, which are brown tipped. And you often see that on, I can think of some wonderful orange tipped mohair, give it a flamed tip. The other thing that comes in around this time with a tipped mohair is really happy, bright colored items. And so at the same time Steiff was doing tipped mohair, they were also doing what I call the jelly bean colors. And that'd be bright pink, bright yellow, lilac, happy, bright colors from the 20s to reflect the roaring 20s and the happy times that it was. So looking for color and type of treatment of mohair is another way of dating. What you're going to find starting in the early 1930s is called wool plush and short pile plush. Now wool plush and short pile plush were used at this time because mohair was being allocated for pre-war purposes. So it just simply wasn't available in large quantities, so the company turned to alternative fabrics that were durable and could be used for toys. The wool plush feels different than mohair because it has a continuous feeling. Mohair almost feels prickly, and this it has a smoother finish. It has a distinctly old-fashioned, durable look and feel to it. Short pile plush is a little bit, a little harder to describe because it's a very flat surface, and the fabric, the nape on the fabric, you can't move it. Wool plush, you can jiggle it, you can comb it. The short pile plush is so short, it's almost continuous to the backing.
Okay.
And I've seen it recently on a horse. So it feels soft, but it doesn't jiggle. Does that make sense? Sort of. When you find something with linen detailing, this is often done just before or just after World War II. You might find an item, and I think we talked about this, Rachel, in Orlando. We talked about teddy bears with linen pads. So linen was used in the place of felt when felt was not available or was rationed. So if you find a teddy bear or another item with linen detailing, it probably was produced just before or just after the war.
It's important to remember that because some people probably get them confused with being replaced.
Exactly.
When they're not.
Or wrong, or
Right.
fake, or fraud. It's actually really, really exciting.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorite periods is this time just before and just after the war, because Steiff was using what they could to produce beautiful
innovative.
items, and sometimes it would have to be linen. Linen was very plentiful, linen was very inexpensive, linen is very durable, so it was an obvious choice. Okay. Just before and just after the war, a lot was done with what was called artificial silk plush, and that was euphemistically called art plush, which sounds fabulous and glamorous. It's actually not. This is a fabric made out of I think a polyester of some sort. It's actually highly combustible, so do not keep your artificial silk plush items near your fireplace. This material looked beautiful when new. It was shiny and glossy and very good looking. Played with it a few times, it looks really shoddy, and I have some examples of that. I'm going to show you some artificial silk items, and you might think they're not Steiff because the quality and the integrity doesn't. The style is beautiful, but the material is yucky.
Right.
But these still are of great interest to collectors and becoming more so of interest because they are also more ephemeral because the fabric was not as durable. Okay. Another post-war feature is this painted color detailing. Earlier on, you'd see patched color, and I'm going to show you an example of a duck that's got the patched color, meaning it's older, and painted color. So it's basically the same type of item, but instead of patching the colors, it's easier to spray painted color. So how it's colored helps to date, going down the line over the years. Velvet detailing, Steiff did a lot in the early part of the post-war period with the smallest item in the series being either of velvet or having velvet detailing. So if you find something with a velvet muzzle or velvet lining the ears, it probably was the smallest version of the item produced. And it's also saying I was produced probably in the 50s or 60s. Okay. In the late 50s and early 60s, Steiff did a lot with unconventional materials. And at the time, this was very strange. They would create items like a bat, which had plastic wings with pipe cleaner arms and legs, or a lobster with pipe cleaner arms and legs. When you see something with really unconventional materials, or a pelican that has like patent leather teeth, really, I think they're fabulous. And they're also quite interesting to collectors because they're very ephemeral. The legs tended to break off, and because the wings were made of plastic, I mean, if you put it in the sun, it would disintegrate, or it would dry out, or it would break. So these are great items, and also of great interest to collectors. And these are also, with full ID, some of the most important post-war collectibles for Steiff collectors. Then you're looking at Draylon, which came in, around the 70s. The only way to describe this Draylon, it sounds like it is. It's an artificial material. It's very hard. It's very hardy. Steiff was designing at the time of the Draylon products toys for children. These were made to be played with, laundered, slept with, dragged to school, go to sleepover parties, the whole 9 yards. It's very durable. Generally, items made from Draylon are kind of floppy. They're softly stuffed, designed for play. Not terribly interesting to collectors, but there's some collector for everything, and there are people who love items from this period. And finally, sort of in the late 70s, early 80s, you're looking at woven fur and other synthetic materials. And you might see, for instance, I'm thinking of a rabbit that has this black kind of artificial mink, and it has like a silver thread in it. So you can clearly tell these were more contemporary. So again, it's not etched in stone, but you will see this general sequence, and when Rachel and I do our lesson, we're going to rely heavily on this to figure out how old something might be. And the last thing, eyes. They're also very important. A little simpler because they didn't change as dramatically as materials, but our earliest eyes at the turn of last century, black wooden shoe button eyes. Starting around 1908, and probably more in the line on a regular basis starting in 1912, round glass pupil eyes, and those would be brown eyes with black glass pupils. You might also see green eyes on cats and felines, and they might be slit pupil eyes, which means instead of a round pupil, they'll be like a crescent or an almond shape. Okay. You're going to see almond glass pupil-shaped eyes on things like Scotties starting in the 30s, and they're beautiful hand-blown eyes, literally in the shape of an almond, and 3 colors. Really distinctive and lovely. About 1960 or so, because of safety reasons, all eyes were changed all eyes for toys were changed to plastic. So they're still pupil eyes and green and white eyes and such, but they're made of plastic and not glass. And one of the ways you can tell, I wouldn't suggest doing this with something in a store that you just found, but one way to check against plastic and glass is the way one would test for pearls. You would tap them on your teeth, and they just have a very different feel. The glass feels crisp and cold, and the plastic feels a little bit warmer and a little less clinky.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
But don't do that in the store.
Don't do it in the store.
Or if you do, don't tell them I told you to do that. But that's how you would do it. And then, of course, plastic cartoon style eyes, and this would be like goofy, oversized eyes, pie eyes, big pupil eyes. That would be on playful, goofy things from, the 70s onward. So all of these things taken together, if you kind of mush them in a pot and stir,
you can really make a lot of headway in dating your animals.
I'm hoping you can. This certainly helps me.
Absolutely.
I do this every day, and I've taught
like
a lot of
little
people.
checklist.
It's a little cheat sheet for you, and I'm glad to share that with you.
That is so nice, everybody. Look at that. We will have this either on download or via email for all of you. And this is done by Steiff Gal. She is Rebekah Kaufman on Ruby Lane. And now we are going to learn a couple hands-on examples.
All right. So, are you ready?
We are ready.
Okay. So, I need your hands.
Okay, so we're going to pass the camera off and...
Okay, don't be nervous.
Okay, no, I'm not nervous.
So what we're going to do, I'm going to ask you to do the following. I'm going to give you 4 items. They are made from distinctly different periods in Steiff's production.
Okay.
I'm going to tell you sort of an overview about what makes them special, and then I want you to noodle that, and I want you to put them in order from earliest to latest.
Okay, did you hear that, everybody? This is what we're going to do. We're having a hands-on class right now. We just learned from Rebekah Kaufman's checklist on how to identify Steiff items, and now we're having a bit of a quiz, I guess you could say.
Don't be nervous. I'm here to help.
All right, and so camera, don't be afraid to get on in and get close so we can see what she's showing us.
We're going to talk about birds first, because birds are very, very popular. I sell tons and tons of birds on my Ruby Lane store, and people seem to love them because they go great with vintage dolls and they look great in vignettes. So here we have a duck that is made of Draylon, and it is unjointed.
Draylon, okay, so we know that that's on later on the further scale, but he's unjointed.
He's unjointed, and you can look around. He used to squeak. There he goes. He's shy.
So he's unjointed. So we learned that we just learned that Draylon was further up on the scale of materials as far as dating them.
Correct.
So I'm going to put him about right there.
Okay. Next we have a duck that's made of patched colored mohair. Take a look. Tell me what you think.
Okay, so patch colored mohair, he's definitely earlier. You can tell, so we're gonna look at the button there. That's in one of the earlier buttons.
That is correct.
Which I don't know if you guys can see that, but that is an early button. How wonderful. Usually we're used to seeing them higher up on the body. I didn't know that they actually put him on the base like that.
Well, he doesn't have ears, or he's not sharing
right,
with us.
And it would look kind of silly right in his beak.
And he doesn't have wings, so
keep that very steady. So I'm gonna put him about right there.
All right. Here we have a duck that has painted coloring.
Painted coloring is definitely going to go in front of the patched coloring, and he has the yellow tag, and so and he has the cuter style bear
Exactly.
tag. So we're going to put that right there.
I think it's pretty clear, but I just wanted to show the viewers. It's a beautiful design, basically has evolved over time, but the difference between an older piece, you can really see it has a distinctly vintage look, has an old-fashioned look, it's kind of a charming look. This is a little more literal, a little more...
Can you guys see that? It's a little bit dark, but we can see that.
And you see this one, which is, as Rachel correctly pointed out, is newer, has
I'm
more...
going to take this so we can... The light is a little bit, we're going to get some better light on here.
Okay. All right.
There we go.
Okay. And you see that's all painted. Beautifully painted.
Beautifully painted.
Steiff does a great job with painting, but it is one way to differentiate why something might be older than others. And our last duck is made from wool plush.
Wool plush. Now, does he have any kind of tags? Let's get that light on him. Any kind of tags or buttons?
I don't remember. Let me see. Nothing here.
Put it back a little bit further.
No. He has wool, so you will have to date him on his
materials. So the wool plush was after mohair. He's going to go about right there, I think.
You are correct. Perfect. Now, I just wanted to point out to the viewers the difference between mohair and wool plush, just because it's not always so obvious. Again, these are all Steiff ducks, and this is from the 20s through the 70s. This wool plush you see here has got a sort of a more continuous fluid feeling to it. This feels more like a hooked rug, or this has a texture to it. This is more continuous in feeling. And the duck just has a beautiful, the 20s and the 30s sort of have a very sweetness to them.
He's just adorable.
And that's, you were
Such
perfect.
a sweet little guy.
Do we have time for another one?
Yes, we do.
Certainly. Okay, I'm going to put these away.
So we just put these ducks in order of time period based off of the wonderful tips and characteristics to look for that we just learned. This video is going to stay on our page so you guys can take screenshots of the screen and learn more.
Okay, what we have here is a silk plush rabbit.
A silk plush rabbit. Okay, that's a little bit close. Let's get the light. There we go.
And you might want to take a look
Silk
at that
plush
button.
rabbit. Okay, we're going to look at the button. Okay, that's a later button. It doesn't have the underscore or the F.
That would be
So
like
we're
a
gonna-
1950-ish button.
Yeah, so
And-
we're going to put him right in the center for
Okay,
now.
and what you see here, this is the artificial silk plush, and you can sort of see, if you look, he still has a little bit of the properties of the very pretty, soft glossiness. For the most part, he's got some wear, and you're going to find that on artificial silk plush. But remember, this was produced, I'm giving you away this, anyway, this was produced during hard times when there wasn't a lot of good fabric choices. So this was the best Steiff could do, and I think he's absolutely charming, and I wouldn't mind finding him in my Easter basket.
Adorable.
Here we have a jelly bean, happy. Trust me, he's pink. You can always look in sort of places where the
He
sun
is,
don't
you
shine.
can tell.
He's also, you can see the white here on his chest, but this is a jelly bean colored rabbit. Also, he has remains of his red ear tag. So where would he
Red
go?
ear tag. So he's going to be right there around the 20s, because we learned in the 20s they had the roaring 20s. They were happy. The times were happy, and they were making happy animals
That's
that
right.
were in funny colors. I love the pink.
He's wonderful. Now, this was made in a variety of different sizes, and this would come in lilac, this would come in blue, this would come in pink. It also came in white and such, and also in a begging position. But these were extraordinarily popular.
Wonderful.
They made a lot of these. The pink color is quite rare, and if you find something in this color, it probably means it's from the mid-20s and of extreme interest. The other fun thing about this piece is that the ears are lined, and so you can make him.
Just love those big ears. Oh, how fun is that? Let's get up close so you guys can see the remnants of the tag. Again, it has the reddish tag and it has the earlier button. So this is from the 20s, and it's kind of hard to tell, but he does have these wonderful pink undertones. Such a fabulous piece.
Now, how about this piece? This piece,
Well, he looks very proud.
isn't he just beautiful?
He is adorable.
And what you need to know about him in terms of telling me when you think he might fit into this timeline is that he has that sort of fresh and new design that Steiff would have been pursuing after the war. And he also has the velvet lined ears. He's also fully jointed, which is important. So what do you think about him?
He's gonna go right over here, I think.
Yes. And he's a
is
wonderful
just-
example.
he
And
is a
got
wonderful example.
He's got all the perfect ID for an item of its time, which is the very early 50s, probably 53 or 54, with his blue imprinted chest tag, his raised script button, and his yellow ear tag. And please note the velvet inside the ears indicating his muscle. Okay. And the last bunny for your consideration is unjointed.
He's unjointed, okay, and he has the same style tag as the one over here, but since he is unjointed, I'm gonna say he's again, no, I'm gonna put him right here. He's unjointed.
Guess again.
Guess again. Okay,
Remember,
was I right?
we go from jointing to least jointing for economic and production efficiencies over time.
Right. Okay. We go from most joining. Okay, I'm gonna put him at the front.
That is correct. He is the newest one, and just sort of from a a way of thinking about it. He is less jointed than this. He's easier to produce. He's less expensive to produce. Yet still darling. We're not going to kick him out of bed for eating crackers. But he's a simpler design than this. And remember, with Steiff, things got simpler over time. Less jointing.
Right.
Patched color to airbrush color and such. So this is exactly what it would be, this order, in terms of dating.
Well, all of your tips just make such perfect sense, and when they're laid out like that and when you explain them like that, it seems easy, but doing this is hard.
No, you did
There's
really
a lot
good.
to learn. A lot
You
to
got
learn.
an A.
Well, thank you. Well, we appreciate it. And Rebekah, how can somebody get in touch with you if they have something they would like you to look at, or if they have a Steiff collection or whatnot?
Absolutely. My pleasure to help. I love speaking with people. I probably answer 20 questions a day online. It's my pleasure to help. You can catch me through Ruby Lane. My email is there. Just click on my store. It's Steiff Gals Vintage Museum Marketplace. We have between 300 and 400 items on sale at any given moment. Not on sale. Available. A lot is on sale because of our sale that's happening now. But I wouldn't list anything on my store I wouldn't have in my personal collection, and I welcome your questions. If you have something special you've always wanted, let me know. I talk with people all day, all over the world. I might just know someone who has it or can get you a special treat.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
how helpful.
This is a lady in the bear and toy world that you need to know. I highly recommend signing up for her newsletter. She publishes how many articles? At least 1 to 2 a month.
Well,
quality articles.
My blog is, I write a post on blog. I post about Steiff every week on my blog, which is My Steiff Life. I have a monthly newsletter that goes out and talks about something seasonal. And I also do extensive work for Doll News here for UFDC and all the other doll and toy publications and Cobells and Worth Point and all of the magazines that have to deal with antiques and collectibles. It's my pleasure and honor to be able to write and contribute towards them.
She's fabulous. And she's also guest blogged on the Ruby Lane blogs multiple times and contributes to our newsletter. So Rebekah, again, thank you so much.
My
This was a
pleasure.
treat.
Thank
We
you.
hope you guys learned a lot. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye.